Hey John,
Hey, happy Valentine's Day, Nick.
I confess, I admit I was surprised when you said you wanted to spend Valentine's Day with me. But John, I have to say, I love you, man. I
There
love you
you
like a
go.
brother.
There's my you can see my heart just thumping out here. This is great. This is great. Thank you so
Happy
much.
happy St. Valentine's Day.
Will you be mine, Nick? This is great. Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow.
So Valentine's Day, it's kind of a big deal in Cormoran Strike. And so I thought we should do a show,
I think that's a good
and talk
idea.
about Valentine's Day. Why am I wrong in thinking this is really a big deal in
No.
Cormoran Strike?
No, I think Valentine's Day serves a very similar purpose in the Strike series that Halloween did in Harry Potter. It's an important annual day. It doesn't always go right, just like in Harry Potter. It's not always an invitation to the feast. But it is important, and it's important to the characters as well. I think particularly Robin. Although again, we don't really see very much in the way of Happy Valentine's yet. But
Oh,
uh,
phew.
yeah. So while we learn in Cuckoo's Calling that Robin has kept a large stuffed elephant that Matthew gave her on their very first Valentine. So this was when they were still back at school.
Literally the elephant in her room.
Yeah. And she recalls later, actually, in Career of Evil. So um she's looking back over their relationship, and she remembers the young Matthew giving her this elephant and his face going red, I guess with embarrassment as he produced it. But that was so important to her that she's not only kept the elephant, she's kept that memory of Matthew when it was presented to her. This is an important time of the year for her.
There's also
Um,
there's also the note that she throws it away when they split, right?
yeah, that's right. So that is, I think that's a meaningful break. So that important memory, no doubt she'll continue with the memory, but the physical incarnation of the thing, that's gone out the window. In Lethal White, there was the comic anecdote. So she's left Matthew. She's Robin is staying with Vanessa Quenzi, and Vanessa is talking about her ex. She put surveillance on the ex because she knew the ex was cheating with her, and she actually broke up by passing her ex a Valentine's card with the photographs of her adultery contained within. Um, we Lethal White, we're introduced the very first mention of Eros himself. So we get Valentine Longcaster. So Strike is remembering Charlotte dragging him to the Epsom Derby, and Charlotte is going because she was invited by Sasha and Valentine Longcaster.
Now let's take a second there, Nick, for people
Yeah,
that haven't memorized everything we've written and talked about here. Valentine Longcaster is Charlotte's best friend, true love, uh, soulmates, and that's really important for the Cupid and Psyche myth because Valentine is clearly associated with Cupid, uh, and Longcaster is a person is an archery term. So really, that's just as Cupid is an archer. So in terms of clear figures that are the Cupid figure, Eros, not Anteros, is right there in Lethal White, and he of course his presence is growing as the series goes on.
yeah. Strikes the importance of Valentine to Strike not so much yet, but it is in his conscious mind. So when he buys those awful Stargazer lilies for Robin in Troubled Blood, he goes for the lilies basically because they're not roses, and roses for him has that connotation with Valentine's Day. Um, maybe it was more important to Charlotte because Charlotte Strike was expecting a message from Charlotte on Valentine's Day because he says as her desire for contact seemed to be triggered by special occasions.
But
So
she does contact him on the 15th, right?
the day
From
after, yeah,
yeah, from Simmons. And basically what does she ask him? Did you have sex?
yeah.
Really the whole Venus Cupid erotic thing is really heavy on Valentine's Day.
But Troubled Blood, of course, also contains that dinner party from hell, Valentine's Day from hell. So it starts badly. So Robin is watching a TV show where they ask if Valentine's Day was an exercise in commercial cynicism, which of course it is, or an opportunity to inject some much needed romance into a couple's life. And it can, of course, also be that. Curiously, they don't mention on the TV show a drink fueled argument with the love of your life and her brother's friends, but this is exactly what happened, the dinner party from hell. So, from starting badly, it gets so much worse. Rokeby calls Strike. Strike tells Rokeby to go forth and multiply, as if he hasn't multiplied enough already.
No, he asked him, but it's a different type. I think he tells him to reproduce asexually.
Yeah, yes. Oh, that's true. Yes, yes. Um, even less likely. Uh, Tragically, Ilsa has a miscarriage. Nick handles this very badly and goes missing. He's
She
with
threw
Strike.
him out.
Yeah, well, he ties up with Strike. They both drink themselves into almost oblivion. Strike is capable, at least, of some degree of locomotion, but he arrives drunk and proceeds to erupt into Vino Veritas. So the Max's flat is filled with Robin's brother and his friends. There's a discussion over dinner, and to use the right-wing American parlance, they take a very woke look at things like women and children's safety, and sex work, and Strike tells them exactly where they've gone wrong. Unfortunately, this because one of the brother's friends knows about what happened to Robin. The rape is mentioned. This is aside just from the embarrassment of her boss being there, completely off his face. Uh, this
Oh,
this
he's quite coherent.
just
I mean,
yeah,
the filters are all down, but
yeah.
Strike is
He's
still
so
scoring points. I mean, he's
yes.
he's not losing any arguments here.
No, he's not. And he is telling truth. He's telling hard truths. He may be slurring, but what he's saying, it can be understood. But he has no control over the situation. He has no control over what he's saying. His judgment is at absolute 0 point.
Yeah, the insensitivity to Robin is maybe the low water mark. That's
Yes. The if you want to take a positive from it, then that spurs Robin to say a few of her own home truths. And I know you, and many other men were cheering. I can only imagine what the female fans were doing at that moment.
well, I don't know. I think the men. I know that I was with Strike in between cars, losing his dinner and beverages, and then to stand up and to see the goddess there. Really talking about truth telling, man. That was rough.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
sobering, let's say. Sobering.
Yeah. I must admit, after reading that, I wasn't I maybe had one fewer pints on the pub that week than I normally have. Um, but yeah, but there's more than that, right? I mean, I've just been talking about Valentine's Day in Troubled Blood, but there's more
Yeah.
than that, John.
Troubled Blood was the book where it really jumped out at me that we were talking about Cupid and Psyche. Yeah, Troubled Blood is where we were talking about Valentine Longcaster as Cupid. Really, it's in Troubled Blood that we started talking about Cupid and Psyche as the core myth, the template myth of the Cormoran Strike series. The way every series so far that we have of from Rowling is that way. That happened because of the fallout from the dinner party from hell on Valentine's Day is Strike's apology to Robin, maybe the first in his amorous life catalog of women.
Well, it's his tactic. It runs through his head that it's never a good idea to apologize first. And anyone who's been in a
then he's off to
long-term
Cornwall into
relationship,
his mythic trip to Cornwall
yeah,
for the death of Aunt Joan. And he says, no, I can't leave without talking to Robin. And so he apologizes to her. And then when he comes back, they have a meeting with another kind of Cupid, or more like a Hermes figure, Carl Oakton, in the American bar. And that goes very badly, as you know. I mean, and Robin tries to stop Strike from doing something really stupid and sort of keeps him from doing something, and by taking the blow herself. When he's winding up to hit Oakton with the right cross, instead he connects with Robin in his windup and knocks her down, knocks her lights out. And so then they go back to the office, and there in the office, there's this really bizarre scene, and it's up in the inner office. The lights are out. They're drinking. I guess they're not in the inner office. They're actually just in the office. And they both think about going upstairs to bed. They're talking about children. Obviously, there's an amorous quality to that, but it's wrapped up in their vocation, what they're about. Strike tells his home truths about Rokeby, because that also happened on, as you mentioned, on Valentine's Day, because he had his first conversation with Rokeby in years and years. So he tells her about that relationship, tells her about his feelings about children. She talks about her misgivings about having children, which she echoed in Hallmarked Man in her conversation with Murphy at the center of part 6, which may be actually the center chapter in the whole book. This scene is taken from the Cupid and Psyche myth. To get that, you have to go through the whole Apuleian myth, and I'm not going to do that right here, but I'll tell you there's one scene in the Apuleian myth where Psyche, which is Greek for soul or butterfly, and that soul is the most beautiful woman in the world, so much so that men especially, worship her, and it draws the envy of Venus. Venus, through various oracles, tells the parents they have to throw her from a mountain. A monster has to take her, and they take her to the top of a mountain. And Cupid, having stuck himself with his own arrow, he falls in love with this most beautiful of women, has the wind blow her to a bower, and he makes a castle. the sisters, I am telling the whole myth, aren't I? The sisters come and her, Psyche's sisters come and convince her that this is a monster, and she's pregnant with this monster's child because the monster comes every night and makes love with her. She can't see him though. That's the only conditions, that she can't ever see his face, can't see who he is. The sisters convince her that he's actually a monster, and so they give her a lamp and a knife so that she can kill this monster before it kills her and eats her and her baby. Of course, this doesn't end well, because she brings the light in to see, and there's Eros, there's Cupid, a very beautiful, divine man. And so she has the knife. She's not going to use the knife. It's not really a monster. It's a god. And the light comes on and injures him, and he runs away. And that leads to the trials of Psyche, because she's broken the terms of their engagement, and now she has to make amends somehow. Now, the scene in the office, I don't know. People really were skeptical when I first brought this up in 2021. Nick, people, I think, kind of strained their eyeballs. I made a monster post, one of the 10 most important posts I've ever written at Hogwarts Professor, about Cupid and Psyche, in which I shared a lot of my PhD thesis about exteriorization and psychomachia and all those things. But that scene is critically important, and that is what happens in that office. I mean, the strike agency, just to give you the point-to-point thing, is the strike agency office is the magical bower to Robin Psyche, the soul of a woman, the incipient psychologist. She's rescued by Strike Cupid, contrary to his intention to serve Charlotte Venus, and brings her into his inner sanctum. Book 1. They work together. They become effective partners. They always, however, respect the boundaries, setting apart the other's personal life and history, rarely asking questions or offering help unless their comrade is in undeniable distress. Now that's their hiding from each other. That all changes the night that Strike clocks Robin, and they return to the office bower for curry and whiskey. Strike is racked with guilt for hitting Robin, though it was an accident, and feels she is owed an explanation. After downing the better part of a bottle of whiskey, he explains to her in the dark, as in, quote, unable to see each other, about his 2 meetings as a boy and 18 years old with Rokeby, and about Charlotte's suicide attempts on Easter Sunday. They then confide in each other their thoughts about having children, and both think that the double bed up one flight of stairs in Strike's apartment. He tells her she is his best mate, and she, shocked, says that the feeling is mutual. Wow. Here they are in their office, the agency where their love was really fostered. Here they are sharing their true stories. Strike finally opening up. He's been the hidden one. He's been the Cupid, right? He's been the Eros figure that has kept himself concealed with Kiara Porter, Nina LaSalle, Ellen Toft, Lorelei Bevan. He's had his secrets. And then the light turns on in the inner office. Barclay enters the darkness of the office. He interrupts Roland Galbraith's inverted retelling of the Psyche and Eros myth. The original has the god and mortal living in darkness of night together, so she can't see who or see what he is. Only by her shining a light on him with a knife in her hand does the Psyche of myth learn that he's not a monster but an Olympian. The Strike 5 version has Robin Psyche learn who Strike Cupid is in the darkness, his revelations of his interior and invisible reality, his soul, only in the absence of light. Saul Morris appears soon after. Barclay and Stryker in his office adjusting the rota, and Robin is washing dishes and singing out on the Charing Cross Road. A car passed by, blaring Rita orders, "I will never let you down." And softly, under her breath, Robin sang along. It's almost like she's accepted his proposal of marriage. If you hear an echo here, that's very much like when Robin and Strike had their side meeting in Lethal White after Robin has left Matt for good. The cop says, "You don't see many Land Rovers of this age still on the roads," and she says, "It's never let me down yet." All right. Anyway, there's all sorts of great stuff in there about Robin's comments about don't be so fucking self-indulgent, etc. But anyway, back to Morris and his entrance into the office. Morris is the epitome of the false Cupid. Just eros, not anteros. Love that is only carnal use without awareness or reciprocity with the beloved. Robin Psyche hates him and only tolerates his verbal foreplay because Strike Cupid and the agency need him. There's a whole alchemical thing about Saul Morris because his name is the Sol Niger, the black sun or shadow of the sun, which is indicative of the Negretto stage of the thing. That's a whole nother post, but if you want to read that. I mean, he enters the office, grabs Robin by the waist from behind. I mean, this is not your subtle Eros figure. And she puts her self-defense training to the test. After driving her high heel into his foot, she slams her head back into his nose and turns to face him with a knife, ready to kill him if he moves towards her. He's ready to kill the monster Eros. Of course, Strike fires him on the spot after learning Robin wants him gone and that Morris had sent her a Christmas dick pic. Okay, now, in the original myth, Cupid is wounded by the light and Psyche has no wish to use her knife. In the Rowling Galbraith inversion and retelling, Strike Cupid is annoyed by the light, and it's interruption. It interrupted his revelatory conversation with Robin, but he's not injured and he doesn't flee. He does in a way, but not like Cupid does. False Cupid, however, who enters the fully lit Bower office, is wounded quite literally and escapes a la Eros after being threatened by Robin Psyche's knife. Right? So that was, to me, that was Troubled Blood's, Valentine's Day. I mean, there was the Valentine's Day with the conversation with Rokeby and then Ilsa's miscarriage and the nightmare, as you call it, the dinner party from hell. I mean that and the really come to truth moment in the street. Where they really have a meeting of minds, or I don't call it a meeting or a battle of minds in the street. That Valentine's Day and the reconciliation immediately afterwards is the thing that sets up this Cupid and Psyche retelling. And that was the first time I really thought of Cupid and Psyche inside these books. Now, Nick, that of course led to that post in 2021. It's largely being ignored by Strike fandom. That was like, again, that was an epic post. And then Ink Black Heart comes out, and there's a whole. Well, first I talked about the two perfumes that Strike gives Robin. You have to help me out. Narciso and something Sucos.
Psychophilia or something.
Yeah, and I mean, there's the link is down below to that post.
Yeah.
I'll talk more about that in a minute, I guess. But that really got me going about this.
Yeah.
And there was very little interest though across fandom, frankly, about this. When people talked about Ink Black Heart, I was like, hey, there's the mythology thing. We got to be looking for the mythology thing. And they were like,
Well, I think the whole fandom, me included, thought that's very interesting. That John, he's a clever guy. That's very, very interesting. Right, what should we look at next? And then in September.
Well, yeah. So we get Ink Black Heart, and we get Running Grave, and there's all sorts of stuff in there that can be read in light of the myth. Robin continues like the scene in Ink Black Heart where she has a near-death experience underground. That's a Cupid and Psyche thing, because that's what Psyche has to do. She has to take a long trip through hell, and then there's the underground thing, of course, when she goes into a box in Running Grave. I mean, there's all sorts of parallels here. It's like, oh wow, she's doing it. She's doing it. And I kept beating that drum, and there was nothing. And then you would get Hallmarked Man, and people didn't really like Hallmarked Man when it came out. A lot of people didn't, at least, and they had expectations that weren't met. And
I think
largely fandoms turned around and really started to embrace Hallmarked Man now. But Rowling in the week after the thing, Nick, anyway, we're at the stage where everybody knew that.
Yeah.
This is about Cupid and
Well,
Psyche.
not quite yet, but we're not far from it. So yeah, the overwhelmingly the fan reaction was either I was disappointed in this. They didn't get the payoff they felt they deserved of Strike and Robin getting together, or it was emotional trauma. So that they
Dare you?
they enjoyed the book. They enjoyed the book, but they felt they needed some counseling to sort of get over it before the next book comes out. Then, September 2025, Rowling pushed out a tweet and she says, public service announcement for Strike and Robin fans, many of whom are saying the same things in my mentions. I'm sorry about the emotional trauma, but I never said this would be easy. Hashtag the Hallmarked Man. Okay, then hashtag Strike 9 is well underway, and this picture may have some relevance to it. And she shared a picture of looked like a classical oil painting, not quite pre-Raphaelite, but certainly Victorian, of a naked woman being lifted by an almost naked winged man. So, as I usually do,
Who could that be, Nick?
well, as I usually do, I mean, my classical knowledge is limited, so I relied on an image search to find out what this painting was. Um, and I was in work at the time, but I had a free moment, so I looked it up and I found it certainly was Victorian. It's called L'amour et Psyche by William Adolphe Bouguereau. I'm assuming that I'm butchering that name, but you can see it in the sort of notes down below. And it was painted in 1889. So L'amour et Psyche is the French for Cupid or Eros and Psyche. And as soon as I got that reference, then I tried getting hold of John. I think in the middle of the night, it must have been over there, but yeah, incredibly excited because certainly after the Hallmarked Man, when John had some incredible predictions, here we are, nearly 5 years later. This prediction that this is important, we need to look for it. We've got J.K. Rowling herself essentially tweeting something straight to John saying you were right all along. Now I'm assuming that Rowling hasn't been reading all of John's stuff and decided this needed to be a template if John thinks she ought to be doing it. That's possible, of course. That's possible. But yeah, very excited. So it was a big deal. Yeah, and shortly it's going to be what we knew all along because we've had another not as big, but another little push along the way. So if you've watched our episode on the very last charm, so the last charm on the last link, and if she's going left to right, as we can assume she is, and if I'm right, that each link is a part of Strike 9, the very last part is going to be Persephone. So it's the last charm is a gold head of Persephone. We know it's Persephone because the maker who makes it sells it as Persephone, and the designer's got lots of other classical heads, but this one is Persephone. Extremely grateful to J.K. Rowling because nobody could find it or identify it in the original image. The image she's got as a header, it's too much at an angle. I was convinced it was Southeast Asian, maybe Thai head. And in the early draft of the post that I put up, that's what I was going to claim it was. But she's put a clearer, better image of both that and the Psalter and the other side of the Psalter, and it is clearly right. It is clearly the head of Persephone. So So now we know not only is Cupid and Psyche important for book 9, Persephone, who forms part of that myth, actually, it's the final trial of Psyche. She has to go to Hades. She's got to visit the underworld. She's got to try and steal beauty. It's a box containing beauty from.
Not stealing it. Not stealing it.
Oh, okay. Well, taking without consent, should we say? I think that's what the magistrates call it in the UK.
No. Persephone fills the box.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
I think so. That's how mythologists will correct me, but I don't think she's scoops it out of a special thing and runs. They have a nice meal together, sort of.
Okay.
I mean, it's very, very restricted. She's she's not allowed to eat everything in hell. But that Persephone is the big figure. It has to get some of the beauty because Venus says this has been so traumatic to her, this whole Cupid and Psyche adventure, that it's touching on her beauty.
Okay.
And obviously she's worried about Psyche being more beautiful than she is, so wants a little touch up. All right, so and we get a box, as if boxes aren't big enough already inside Cormoran Stripe. We get this box. Anyway, so that's
So now we're all on board, John. We now knew this all along. We knew it's what everybody always knew now, John. So now we've always known this. And we're leaning forward to Strike 9 because Rowling's pushing us that way. Is now the time that we should be going back and looking at the books that we've already got?
Yeah, I mean, this is the whole first generation to third generation Rowling studies versus fourth generation Rowling studies. Is first to third generation Rowling studies is consumed by the very latest book, and only so much as it tells us what the next book is about. And fandom is going to focus really on all of those clues. That's fun. It really is. I forgive me, Nick, but I was the one who helped. I was part of that vanguard during the Pottermania that did that, and I brought new tools to the game, and it was. I think I told the New York Times at one point it was the most fun you could have with your clothes on, was guessing what the next Harry Potter book was going to be about. That having said that, really the fourth generation of Rowling studies after her Lake and Shed revelation, really in 2019, which is to say she was basically telling the field of the people who are studying her work, here's what you need to be doing, idiots. You got to start looking at the work as a whole. You got to look at her in the context of her life. Look for the major themes across the thing. Look for the tools in the shed and the springs in the lake and the golden threads that go through all the work. So we still do the fun stuff here and talk about Strike 9. We're not immune to that because it is a lot of fun. But it's not really the focus of what we're doing here. And sure enough, if you look at, really just look at the latest book. You want to stick with the most recent stuff. You get Valentine Longcaster, the character with the Cupid name again, is he appears at a crucial part in part 5. I think it's chapter 62, where he dresses down Robin, attacks her, demeans her. Literally, I think he begins he's the catalyst to her breakdown, which we see at the end of the book. And I don't think it's any mistake that we get the Cupid figure, and Robin, and he's brutal. He's sadistic with her. Calls her a pit pony, demeans her in terms of her insecurities about her, her compared to Charlotte Campbell, So, the Psyche thing is right there. We have Cupid playing a big role in the thing. And then Valentine's Day in Strike 8 is, again, another big deal. We get Robin with Murphy, where Robin spells out to him, I'm really not on board with the kids. And we get to see Murphy in his really at his low point, where he's manipulating her in order to lay the ground for a conversation about kids. And Robin just says to him exactly what she said to Strike in their office meeting in Troubled Blood. Hey, I just don't think I can be a good mother if I'm doing this job. And she says, if that's a deal breaker, oh, no, it's not a deal breaker, he says. Oh, yeah. And then we go to Valentine's Day. He gives her a plush toy, very much like Matt gave her a plush toy. He doesn't know this has that resonance with her. Not a big plus. Tries to guilt trip her about her going out on surveillance on the night of on Valentine's Day. Supposed to be a romantic, supposed to be Cupid's night. And of course, she winds up with Strike going to that Valentine's Day activity that all men in the United Kingdom, love to do, and that's go to the dogfights. And we get 3 references to dogs guarding the gates of hell. One in a Browning epigraph, one in both Robin and Strike observe that this tiger-like animal that Plug takes out is Cerebrus-like. Doesn't have 3 heads, but he might as well have it. And that's a part of Psyche's in the myth. Psyche has to enter. She goes to Sparta. She finds the entrance to hell. She goes down into hell. She has 2 barley cakes with her and 2 coins. The coins are to get across the Styx with Charon, and the barley cakes are to feed to that doggone dog, to make sure that dog will let her pass. And so we get, here we have, are we now entering the gates of hell there? We don't know, because there's other, we got boxes, as I said, in Running Grave. She's gone underground a couple of times. That whole near death scene in Ink Black Heart. Now this is, she goes into hell to rescue a man, which is really altruistic love, anti-erotic love. She just throws herself on the tracks, and Strike can't believe it, pulls her out. It's the last second, right? That's largely what this is a traditional interpretation of the Psyche myth. It's what's going on here is that Psyche is being purified of her ego and carnally minded concerns and more towards her vocation and her selflessness. We'll talk about that, but those scenes, excuse me.
Put up.
Those scenes are really good in Hallmarked Man. I thought, well, here we are. We got Valentine's taking a big place. He's definitely our major, candidate for the person who killed Venus, killed Charlotte. But I don't think those scenes are the best Cupid and Psyche moments, Nick, in the series. And putting aside the Troubled Blood office scene, they're there in the very beginning, right? What about Cuckoo's Calling?
So Cuckoo's Calling. So I think you very succinctly went through the myth of Cupid and Psyche, and one of maybe the pivotal moment is Psyche being conveyed to the peak of a rocky crag and cast down. That image of the falling woman. And of course, Cuckoo's Calling. So we have Lula Landry being pushed from the marble white luxurious mansion that she has, and not surviving. We have Robin being pushed from that stairwell, same stairwell where we see the last scenes of the Hallmarked Man. It's her first day on the job. She's just been proposed to by Matthew. Underneath the figure of Cupid, not Eros, it's actually Anti-Eros in Piccadilly. And as she reaches the top of those steep stairs, because the birdcage lift is out of order, the door opens and she is cast down. Now, in the myth, A wind, Zephyrus, the west wind, bears her up and conveys her to a magical land, a bucolic place, almost the ideal existence, until, of course, it gets ruined later on in the myth. But that sort of ideal land for Robin is a detective agency office. She's a temporary secretary. She's working in an office. Where does she want to work? She wants to work in a detective. Never imagined it would be true, but she's going to work in a detective's office. Now, this helps us, I think, put some names of characters in the Strike series to their counterparts in the myth. So if we take that scene on the stairs to be pivotal, then Robin, of course, is Psyche. And there's lots of parallels.
She's a psychologist.
She is a psychologist. She is incredibly beautiful. She is not married, has no children, although many of her friends are. They're going forward in that road of life, and she's not. And that's true for Psyche as well. Her sisters were all married; they had families, and Psyche herself wasn't. We have, I think, a really good candidate for Venus, which is Charlotte, also incredibly beautiful, jealous of Robin's beauty. And that sort of leaves Strike. So Strike is the partner of Venus, but also I think you could say that relationship, certainly the power imbalance of the relationship, you could look at Strike as being the sun. So in that instant, Cormoran could be Cupid.
Okay, so there are three male figures in Venus's life. The first one is her husband, Hephaestus, who's the blacksmith, and he's brilliant and a forger, but he's also lame. He also has a bad leg. So that Strike's obviously a fit for that. Then there's Ares, who is Venus's lover, and Ares is the god of war. Strike has his military history and his medal, right? And then there's Cupid, as you said. Has this bizarre codependency relationship with Charlotte, where they're on again, off again. She nurtures him like a mother in his basically his invalid status, after the IED explosion. So it's a very bizarre relationship, but it certainly conforms, the Strike Charlotte relationship to Venus and all the men in her life. Anyway, and she comes blowing out the door and almost, knocks Robin over. And I think is it in Troubled Blood? That Charlotte says, I don't think I've ever been as jealous of any woman as I am of that girl, Robin, which is exactly what Venus relationships is with Psyche at the beginning of the myth. And informs the entire myth, is Venus's anger with the Psyche and her connection with Cupid. Anyway.
This is great, John. This is fun. So should we go through all the books and look for parallels?
Boy, on one hand, it's already been done, and I'll put links down below to where it's being done, and the effort continues. Like, we're at a critical stage in this right now, right? Rowling has said it's going to be resolved by the end of the next book. It may, she says, have something to do with the next book. It'll be quite the thing if this has all been a sham and she's just pulling our tails here, Nick. But this Tam Spells, I put the note down below. She's really the leader in this, as far as I'm concerned. I've communicated with her. We're going to have her on the show. We'll do that point by point thing. And there's about 20 points of the myth we should be looking for correspondences with, and that'll largely be back and forth. I don't think it's going to be a straight. I don't think we're going to see a sequence without breaks in it. But it is interesting that we have, the critical moment in the story, the knife and the light confrontation in the inner office at about halfway in the series, right? We're getting near the end of, we're past the halfway point of the 5th book, right? So we're halfway there. And the beginning is so obviously the beginning of the book. And you know, I mean that beginning is so rich. But here's where I get I don't want to do that right now. It's Valentine's Day, Nick. It's supposed to be fun, right? It's supposed to be, chocolates and flowers and, whatever happens in your life after, flowers and candy. Now, I think a better idea than just doing this point-to-point thing is to look more closely at that statue in the beginning and what other writers that Rowling loves have done with that myth. I mean, that the statue in the beginning where Matt proposes, Robin calls it the statue of Eros in, this is Piccadilly
Circus.
Yeah. Okay, Piccadilly Circus. And she loves everything about it. She's really, over the moon in delight with her engagement ring. Contrast that to the engagement ring she sees the shackle now, coming up. This is a real. You should be looking at these things now, because we're the 5th or 6th book. I shouldn't say that. Here we are in the 8th book. This is really the beginning of the end. We're bringing ourselves back to that beginning, what that moment actually meant. If we go back to that beginning and look at that statue, I think it was Joanne Gray was the first one to point out that statue is not Eros. That statue is Anteros. And there's an opposition between Eros and Anteros, as you might get, sort of like Eros and the anti-Eros. If you look at that statue and how it's confused, people always call it the Eros statue when it's the Anteros statue. And why it's the Anteros statue in Piccadilly Circus is because it's a monument to this great leader's love for others and the community. If you look at what other great writers, ones that Rowling loves, have done with this myth, specifically Edmund Spenser and the Fairy Queen, which is the background book and template for Troubled Blood, probably the best thing she's ever written, and C.S. Lewis in Till We Have Faces. And Lewis's stuff permeates almost everything Rowling writes. I mean, Christmas Pig is just the Great Divorce, and Harry Potter is the Chronicles of Narnia, and Cormoran Strike looks like Till We Have Faces. What do those writers do? Both Lewis and Rowling love Spenser. Well, to get that, you have to read a little Spenser scholarship, Nick. That's not what everybody loves to do, right? None of the Spenserian epigraphs chosen for Troubled Blood refer to Venus or Cupid, which is a shame. C.S. Lewis, in his posthumous book Spenser's Images of Life, wrote that the mythology of Cupid and Venus is one of the central interests of the poem. Lewis devotes the better part of his book on Fairy Queen, in fact, to discussion of the treatment of Cupid and the false Cupid, right? Cupid meaning Anteros, and the false Cupid being Eros. Thomas Hyde, in his Cupid entry for the Spenser Encyclopedia, says the same thing. He said, the god of love, or more precisely of amorous desire, appears in Spenser's poetry more often and in greater variety than any other god or goddess. Hyde thinks that the two Cupids evident in Fairy Queen are aspects of the one god in his carnal and his spiritual aspects, a coherent mythology, as well as a poetic theology of love. In fact, Spenser, this is all Hyde. In fact, Spenser persistently relates human erotic impulses to the heavenly love that created and sustains the universe. We talk about this a lot here. This is the logos fabric of reality. You have the God who is love. And that the human erotic impulse is a shadow of that, sort of a fallen thing. There's Eros and there's Anteros. But two Cupids there are in Fairy Queen and in Cormoran Strike. We're struck by this in the story because it begins in Cuckoo's Call. Nick just talked about with Robin's recall of Matthew's proposal the night before beneath the statue of Cupid on top of the Shaftesbury Memorial Fountain in Piccadilly Circus. Okay? Unlike Psyche climbing the mountain to her death, marriage to the inhuman monster foretold by the oracle, Robin has a suitor in hand. She's got him in hand. Very much like Psyche, though, she's about to enter the mad world of Venus. Robin just misses being run over by Charlotte Campbell, our Aphrodite, as she exits the Denmark Street entrance. The street entrance to the offices. They meet face to face, missing contact by a centimeter. And Robin is astonished by the woman's beauty and exhilarated appearance. Yeah, she's a goddess. Strike here takes the role of Cupid in the myth head on. Eros was charged by Venus. We're going to do it again, right? To throw Psyche from the peak of the mountain. Instead, he rescues her from the precipice, falls in love with her, and takes her to a secret magical place apart from the world, hiding herself from her vision. Strike, in pursuit of Charlotte, knocks Robin off the top of the lethal staircase. And she was catapulted backward, handbag flying, arms windmilling, to her almost certain death. But he doesn't kill her. He saves her. He seized a fistful of cloth and flesh. I love this passage, Nick. A second shriek of pain echoed around the stone walls, and then with a wrench and a tussle, he had succeeded in dragging the girl back onto firm ground. Her shrieks were still echoing off the walls, and he realized that he himself had bellowed, "Jesus Christ!" Okay? The God of love, Spencer's heavenly love that created and sustains the universe, is named by the story stand-in for the mythological Cupid, spiritual god of love. And the myth love story of Robin and Cormoran has its start. I mean, this is Eros and Teros. As in the myth, their first contact is physical, even sexual. He grabs her, you'll recall, by a substantial part of her left breast, the part just above her heart, which is where this Logos thing lives. The office is their secret sanctuary. Strike, an emotional and financial freefall because of Charlotte's madness, immediately hides himself from Robin in his inner office, and until troubled blood, at least, he conceals his history and feelings from her so she can't know who he is. She's constantly complaining that he's a closed book to her. Now, here's, I think, the key, and what I really hope to talk about today more is this Eros and Teros opposition. Is that it seems almost every character in these novels has an Eros relationship, physical desires, ego focus, sexual satisfaction, and an Anteros opposition, which can be a person's relationship with their mother, because that's selfless, sacrificial love is what a mother's love is. And Rowling's work is always a symbol for Christ. And everybody has a relationship with their mother. So you have this Eros Anteros opposition. And then you see also that Anteros opposition being this Logos, meaning the word, it's the thing that calls you. It's your vocation. It's what's calling you. And so we see that. I mean, at first, just talk about Robin. She's attacked by a rapist. That's about as base the form of Eros as you can get. And Matt becomes her Anteros, her safe spot, who nurtures her and protects her and comforts her. All right. But then, she meets Cormoran Strike, as you said, Nick, and this is her vocation. This detective agency is her heavenly bower, where she's fully realized as a human being. She's having like an apotheosis. She gets to be a detective, which she always wanted to do. And Matt is revealed as not a rapist, but again, a fallen erotic lover. Okay, and eventually an adulterer. Right? Now we get RFM in the role of the protector and the lover, and Strike is in the Strike 8 at least. He becomes the rapist. He becomes the guy that is just abuses and uses women and lies. He's just so horrible with women. And only at the end of part 6 does Robin again realize, no, that's not the case. She's seen Murphy in part 6 say to her, basically set her up so he can do that and give her the little Valentine's Day, doggy, and make her feel guilty that he's not going to be with her basically providing sex on Valentine's Day. I think he's clearly drunk at the end of part 6 when he says, this is some effing Valentine's Day. This is. That's, and then we see, Charlotte versus Robin, where Strike, Charlotte nurtures Strike like a mother after his IED blast. She's this anti-erotic thing, and she encourages him at the agency. But then Robin comes onto the scene, and she really is the incarnation of everything about his vocation as a avenger. And Charlotte becomes just this stupid erotic woman. And we get the coincidence that the statue of Eros/Anteros bringing these things to a crisis. All right. And of course, we've got Strike. He's got his lover parade. All the women, Kiara Porter and Ellen Toft and Lorelei and Madeline and Bijou, they're all on his erotic side. He's got his life compartmentalized, erotic, get what you need because you can't get what you want, versus Robin, his love for her is anti-erotic. He's nurturing, he's caring, he fosters her vocation. Really, he's almost a divine spiritual guide, as the divine part of Castor and Pollux. Well, what Rowling is doing here with that thing is really putting right in the face of every reader the core question of human life, which is the focus of the soul on either ephemeral body and its desires, or the soul focusing on the noetic faculty within it, the heart or the logos within. That's really the question you have to answer every day in your life is, what am I about? Am I about things which are eternal or ephemeral? And that aspect of me, which is eternal, that's continuous with this logos fabric of reality, the God who is love that brings us into existence moment to moment, that's the right focus in human life. What you see in the story is that doesn't mean you can't have a loving relationship with another person. It has to be in that context. That person has to share that focus with you or support you in that thing. So,
wow.
If we're gonna march through the books, Nick, on Valentine's Day, here we are with our red hats, right? We should be looking in each of the books for an Eros Anteros distinction unique to that book and the choices made. And you want me to you want to go through Cuckoo's Calling, and we'll play racquetball here and go back and forth and fill each other's blanks, or what do you want to do here?
Okay, yeah. Let's. So, shall I kick off with Cuckoo's Calling?
You go ahead.
Okay.
And I hope we'll both interrupt each other and say, "Oh, but you forgot this."
Okay, so if we look at partnerships with Lula Landry, the murder victim, then her Eros relationship, her erotic relationship, is with Evan Duffield. So it is a very emotional, unstable. You could say that Evan is leeching off of Lula Landry's success. He's very much dependent. And then the anti-erotic relationship with Lula, I think, would be Guy Sommeil. So not an erotic relationship. He's a gay man. But he's devastated by her loss. Lula...
He loves her. He doesn't love her because he wants a sexual relationship with her. Maybe the only man she has in her thing that is like that. But I want to go back to Evan Duffield. Rowling, I think, points to another sort of mythic thing, is the fairy tale. She has him wear a wolf's mask.
That's right.
And she's Little Red Riding Hood. Doesn't she wear a red coat at one point? When she's a little girl or something like that. They remember that she wears a little red coat. And in the fairy tale, she's going through the woods to visit her grandmother, which is, again, even more selfless than a mother's love is a grandmother's love, right? There's no, and she's off to this anti-erotic love, and here comes this vicious animal ready to eat her, which is metaphorical for obvious things. And who steps in? The woodsman steps in and kills the wolf, and she has her relationship with her grandmother, and all is well. Well, Lula, unfortunately, doesn't have that. And Lula also doesn't have a relationship with the mother, right? Lula's mother is Marlene Hickson. That's a disaster.
Yeah.
And her second mother is Yvette Bristow. Not much better. We've seen the two ends of bad motherhood. One is just horrible neglect, and the other one is just overindulgence and nothing. And she just wanted a baby. She just wanted a baby.
Yes, and you can argue that actually that's also an Eros relationship, very much like Evan Duffield, because she relied on Lula to supply her with what she wanted. She wanted that love and that recognition. And
Guy denies that's what he's doing. Obviously, he's making money off of her.
Yeah.
But he's like, no, this woman was my muse. And that they did that for each other. He obviously did great things for her. He made her as famous as she was. So yeah, but how about in that same book, John Bristow? I want to go victim and murderer through these books. Okay. We got the victim here, and that's great. But John Bristow. So
he's another man that's ruled by his passions. Not that he's a passionate man, in terms of erotic sexual passion, but he is ruled by his emotions. He's slighted at work.
I think the Yvette Bristow thing, because she preferred Charlie and Lula, sends him around the twist as a boy when he kills Charlie, and then when he kills Lula as well. It's to secure the attention and affection of his mother and her inheritance, right? But his Eros, the only Eros connection is with Allison Creswell, and that's, Guy Sumet calls that out. He says, she's talk about a beard, so we see this Eros Anteros thing in the Silkworm. The victim is Owen Quine. And I think that the Anteros relationship for Owen Quine is Leonora and Orlando. She's not. Leonora is really limited, but she's very loving. She does whatever he wants sexually, and
forgiving to a fault.
That's right. Sacrificially loving. She has her child who's handicapped, and Orlando loves him, as a father, and he loves her as well, that way. But the Eros relationship is with Catherine Kent. She's a writer, and he's fostering her vocation, and it's clearly sexual as well. She's a much younger woman. So, Quine is conflicted, but at least he has an erotic and an anti-erotic relationship which is satisfying. Lula Landry, Lula Landry is pursuing her brother, Jonah Agyeman. Because she wants an authentic anti-erotic relationship, right? Now, not a sexual one. Obviously, it's going to be her brother, but her false brother kills her, murders her, because he wants her money. He's after her just for material, selfish gain. Jonah Agyeman he can't believe that this is his sister, and he can't believe it. And then when he gets the inheritance, he can't believe he doesn't know what to do with it. Anyway, Elizabeth Tassel, the murderer in The Silkworm. Oh, wait a minute. I should give warnings, Nick? Anyway. Elizabeth Tassel, her erotic relationship is with Michael Fancourt, and it's failed. He rebuffs her. He can't get it up. And her anti-erotic relationship is essentially with Owen Quine. That he protected her from Michael Fancourt and took it on the head. He broke his relationship to protect her in that, the parody that she wrote about Michael Fancourt's wife, who killed herself. But Quine is nobody's anti-erotic thing because he's not fostering Elizabeth Tassel's relationship as an artist. You know, in that picture, she's with Joe North and Michael Fancourt and Owen Quine, and she's in the picture not really just so much as their agent, I think, as another writer of that generation. And she, of course, does write a book, Nick. Woo! She finally writes her book, and it's the death of Owen Quine.
I mean, it's a pastiche, but it is a book.
That's right. That's right. So the Career of Evil. I'm bouncing the ball back to you.
Oh, right. Okay. So, well, I mean, there's a lot of victims, John. Do we want to go for the original victim?
Yeah, so I did. I only chose one. You know, it really.
Yeah. That's yeah, and there's
it's a morgue's smorgasbord, Nick.
There's not a lot of Anteros going on either. But okay, so if we go with the original victim, that's Kelsey Platt, a teenager, a child, really. So her Eros, I guess. Who did she have a relationship with that was unrequited, was led by passion, was abusive? I mean, I've got to say with the murderer, with Donnie Lang.
Yeah, Ray Williams, you know, in his relationship with Hazel Furley, comes her thing. But what he's feeding on is that she has an obsession with a rock band leader.
Yeah, is it Liam?
Oh, wouldn't that be something? No, I hadn't caught that. Our serious strikers all went, "Ooh!" No, I thought it was what's it called? First generation, or what's it called? First something or other. I don't know.
One Direction.
One Direction. That's it.
Yeah.
So that I don't think that's Liam, but well, we'll see. But anyway, she has this projected fantasy lover, the rock band leader that we see a little bit in Casual Vacancy too. Just this stray erotic impulse.
Yes.
And then we get
that's all coming from Kelsey, isn't it? I don't think we can accuse rock band leaders of.
Yeah. Well, they sell the posters, but really, you remember that Kelsey Platt's mother and father die in an accident, and she's left with their much older sister, who's not really happy about her being around.
Yeah.
And then Ray Williams, he just wants to use her to dismember her, to get it Robin.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we could split Ray in two because actually the person that Ray Williams was to Kelsey right up until the end, actually he was the supportive parent.
When he pulls the knives out of his coat. Oops.
Then of course he goes from Anteros to Eros, doesn't he? But he's Ray Williams himself is essentially a fictional character, just like the lead singer of One Direction, essentially to Kelsey is also a fictional character. He's a construction, a marketing construction that's put out there to attract girls like Kelsey.
How about Donnie Lang? We're talking about Ray Williams, but we're really talking about Donnie Lang.
So Donnie Lang, so he's the murderer. So
what's his Eros?
So his Eros, I mean, almost all of his victims, but we go for the one that I think sticks in most of our imagination, sadly, would be Rona Bunyan. What a surname that is. So his wife that he held hostage in Cyprus. That was I think really where he fed allowing his desires to override almost everything else.
Yeah, and we don't meet Rona Bunyan.
Yeah,
we get her through her mother.
Yes,
Margaret. And what a meeting that is in that pub.
Yeah,
where the mother gets to share the agony of the child being, ritually butchered, really, raped with a knife. Wow.
Yeah.
But every one of his hostage women thereafter is also his erotic thing. As you said, he puts on the face, he puts on the mask, and wants to murder them. He always abuses them and leaves them in much worse condition than when he arrived. But all of those women are just, they're just erotic toys to him.
Yes.
And the anti-erotic part of his life doesn't have one. I mean, he sees himself as a god.
Yeah.
And the reason he sees himself as a god is because his mother Agnes Waite had an affair. She was in a violent, abusive relationship, and she decided to have an affair, leave her husband and have an affair with a policeman, conceives Donnie Lang. The policeman, disappears. And the abusive father beats the bejeebers out of Donnie Lang, because it's not his son. So there's no anti-erotic presence in his life at all. And he becomes the monster that he is. Again, eros and teros. I mean, if you're not living a life inside your vocation, and you're just living on an ego level, it's you can be a really nice person, but Rowling seems to be saying that's the foundation for mental illness, violence against women, etc. All right, Lethal White. Jasper Chisholm, I'm gonna say, is the victim, is the victim here. And I'm gonna say his anti-erotic relationship was with Patricia Fleetwood. We're seeing the Fleetwoods come back now in Hallmarked Man. And someone in our comments has pointed out, hey, that's got to be a connection. This is a small world. How many Fleetwoods are there in the United Kingdom?
Not a common name.
That's so. Patricia Fleetwood is his anti-erotic love, is the mother of almost all of his children. And then he's seduced by a journalist, a political journalist, who simply wants. She's in this for it's a pregnancy trap.
Yeah.
And she springs the trap, and it fails. Jasper Chisholm doesn't leave his wife. His wife leaves him, and he gets basically stuck with the kid, who's Raphael Chisholm, who's the doggone it, he's the murderer. And I think you can say that Jasper Chisholm's erotic relationships are with Kinvara, Henratty, and with Ornella Seraphim. They're not really the loves of his life. He does have real feelings for Kinvara, but she's nuts. She's an imbalanced woman. Patricia Fleetwood should have been the love of his life, but he took an erotic left turn, and everything came unglued. And basically everything in his life after that is because it's the torture of Raphael by his oldest son that leads to almost all the nightmares inside the story, and to the Grant Wynn's family as well, because the older son is such a nutcase. Now Raphael, he's got his mother relationship is with Ornella Seraphim, and she was a woman who was trying to score with the minister in order to get a marriage and security for the rest of her life, and she basically leaves Raphael to his her lover's family, who despises him. There's no Anteros there at all to speak of. He grows up as the thumb on the hand. And what I love about this is that his erotic relationship is with his mother, with his father's second wife. that he chooses as his revenge. He chooses to do to his father what Ornella had done to Jasper's wife, Patricia.
Yeah.
To cuckold him. So yeah, they're again, Eros and Teros. Troubled blood, Nick. Troubled blood.
Okay, troubled blood. So, victim, of course, is Margot Bambra. So her erotic, her eros, has got to be Paul Satchwell. The open collared shirt, the medallions, the skin tight jeans. Wow.
But the best part about that to me is that Paul Satchel means little bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which of course,
it's like he's
to get away with those skin tight jeans, you can't have a little bag, John, He must have been artificially inflating with something. Um, so her Anteros, I think, is a triumvirate. So there's Una, of course, her closest friend as she was making her way in London. There's Roy. Now, theirs was a marriage that was not perfect. Frankly, it was on the rocks towards the end. But I think it was savable. I think Roy regretted so much the lack of communication. And we see that in really the two interviews we have at Roy's house. That although he's a cold character, he doesn't like to show emotion. Actually, he was broken up by the loss of Margot. And then there's Anna. Her child, her one and only child, who Margot, although she was a working mother, was devoted to.
Who changed all of her views about abortion.
Absolutely.
I don't know about absolutely.
Well,
because clearly she makes an exception.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
That's sort of that's the medieval morality play of Troubled Blood.
Yes.
But we definitely see that Anna Phipps is beloved, so much so that Anna Phipps grows up to marry the spit image of her mother.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those. Woo. Not especially subtle there, Mrs. Murray.
Unless of course you watch the TV show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Not a spit image of that.
No.
Okay, they decided not to make that so obvious. All right. And the murderer?
So the murderer, of course, is dear little Janice Beattie, the district nurse who wouldn't hurt a fly. Incredibly competent nurse, very caring, has a sideline in poisoning people. So her Eros again is Steve Doothwaite. Stroke Diamond, stroke how many different names he picked up. Janice was obsessed with him to the point of murder. Janice, I don't think really understands what love, either erotic or anti-erotic love, is. I think she understood the obsession. She understood the need to be with Stephen and Stephen to want her. But I don't think she truly understood what that meant.
Yeah, is this like with Donnie Lang, that the mother is pretty much dead?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they say that her mother died in childbirth when she was a very small child.
Yeah.
And the father threw her down the stairs and things.
Yeah.
I mean, she didn't really have anti-erotic experience at all.
No.
She springs a pregnancy trap, has a child. Father doesn't marry her.
Yeah.
And as you said, she just becomes obsessed with Stephen Dowthwaite. But there's another murderer in Troubled Blood.
Of course, there's Dennis Creed. Wow. So, I mean, Dennis Creed is a serial killer. What can you say that serial killers are ruled by their passions? I guess if you can say that their passion is killing.
Really, the names here are what's so incredible. Janice as Elizabeth Baird Hardy, and Beatrice Groves had pointed out, is a cryptonym.
Yeah.
For Janus, Janus, the two-faced god. She has a front and a back that's just, she's wearing a mask all the time. Yeah. And she plays a social worker inside the thing. She's really good at that. But Dennis Creed's name, Creed, of course, is the sign of it being a religion.
Yeah.
Just a consuming ideological faith. And Dennis is the English form of Dionysius, the god of passions and wine. And so he is Eros, without any restrictions. He's mad. He's really the mad god. And again, what do you think his Anteros, background is? I mean, he has
Yeah.
how old was his mother when he was born?
Uh, 14? I mean, she was young.
Right. She's a child of
Yeah.
incest. It's her stepfather, not her biological father, right? But it's
Yes.
still,
Yeah.
violation. I mean, the defining erotic relationship is not rape; it's incestuous rape.
Yeah.
The violation of the most trusting, dependent relationship. And Agnes, the lamb, just runs.
Yeah.
She can't be there with this child. And Dennis grows up, of course, being beaten by his grandfather father.
Yeah.
What is his? Does he have an erotic relationship?
I mean, you could argue with any and all of his victims. That uh, the way he murdered them by prolonging their agony over weeks and months. I mean, it's not any kind of erotic love that either you or I would recognize, but
And
that is it's
yeah,
passion beyond all scale.
and there's Louise Tucker is unique among those victims that he kills her almost right away. It's just an absolute
Yeah,
passion and an orgy of murder, and he throws her down a well, which is and he hides her body, just this erotic shame, just down the well. And then her father, her anti-erotic lover, Brian, dedicates his life to finding her and
yeah.
having his revenge on Creed. So again, Eros and Turos, even in play with Dennis Creed. How did I wind up with Ink Black Heart?
Let me take Ink Black Heart. Let me take that one because I know you were slightly distracted when Ink Black Heart came out. And this one, at least, I think, is relatively easy. So we have the victim is Edie Ledwell, the very talented creator of the animation Ink Black Heart, and her Anteros, the person that she should be with, was Josh Blay.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, one of the signs of anti-erotic relationships, they're really positive male-female relationships, is humor,
Yeah,
playfulness, and
yeah,
their shared vocation.
yes.
And Joshua and Edie had that, right? I mean, that was
They did, and they had their problems. And again, they could have worked it out, but Edie really had no one else in her life that she could rely on. No, I mean, no one. There was Grant, who bunged her what, £200 because she was homeless. £200, and that's basically it. Sadly for Edie, she split up with Josh largely due to his unreliability because of his drug abuse, and then she met her Eros, which is Philip Ormond, ex-police officer thrown out of the police for improper behavior. He was too brutal. Well, surprise, he was brutal with Edie as well. So he's a woman beater. He's manipulative. And after Edie is killed, all he really cares about is how he can make a buck out of it.
Someone this morning on the on the comment things. Let me see if I can bring this up because she's a new commenter and she's really quite good. I assume it's forgive me, Rubes. Rubes. Rubes says, in the Ink Black Heart, Joss says he thinks that Edie's boyfriend was harassing her so she would rely on him as an ex-cop to feel safe. this is why I buy the theory that RFM was also stalking Robin in Hallmarked Man in order to make her rely on him and ditch Strike.
That's a good point.
There's a thing about cops, because that's the person to whom Donnie Lang's wife, Rona Bunyan, goes. She finds safety in a policeman.
Yeah.
He is her anti-erotic home because she can't reproduce. Lang sterile, made her into. He gave her a de facto hysterectomy. So there's an interesting play about what marrying a policeman means inside these books, or having a policeman as a relationship there. But I think Rubes is right. We've got to see what Rowling has said about relationships with policemen in the books, because Donnie Lang's mother, Agnes Waite, had a relationship with policemen too. That wasn't anti-erotic. All right, I'm sorry to interrupt. You're doing it back hard, and I should be saying nothing.
So the murderer. So the murderer is the charming Gus Upcott as enemy. Now his closest relationship is a virtual relationship with the genius Vikas Bhardwaj. Is that relationship an eros or an anti-eros relationship?
Well, I mean, he's bipolar, right? He's or what do you call that? Non-bipolar or whatever. I mean, he's got enemy, in which he's a masculine. He's like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he bullying everybody and boasting about being a murderer and stuff. And then he's Paperwhite. He has his trans identity, where he becomes a woman.
But I don't think either of those identities really are real. I mean, Paperwhite is certainly created to find out what Vikas is up to.
Well, Morehouse certainly buys it as a real.
Yes. Yeah, Morehouse buys it as real, but Gus has created that personality to fool Morehouse Vikas.
That's why I think that's why I think it's an erotic relationship. It's simply for advantage.
Yes.
And for pleasure.
That's true. But we know before we had this enemy Paperwhite dichotomy, before enemy went full steroidal crazy, we know that when Gus and Vikas were creating the Ink Black Heart, they used to have a laugh. I mean, Vikas misses his friend Gus. So I think originally that might have been an anterotic relationship, which developed into the twisted one it became.
Yeah, certainly Morehouse has a real loving relationship with Paperwhite. She's really pursuing him, and he's trying to keep it so that she can't meet him because he's handicapped.
Yes,
he thinks. He's drop dead brilliant, but he's not a physical poster child. Gus Opcott's mother. I don't know if it's so much his lack of affection from his mother, who seems pretty distracted in all the things she does, as it is just the brutality of his father.
Yeah. Yes, I think from Gus's eye view, other than the fact that he has this incredible power over all of the anonymous people in Ink Black Heart, in his real world, he's quite a helpless little boy. He has a mother that is at best disinterested, and a father that seems to actively detest him. The only one really in that family that he could have had a half okay relationship with is his sister, but his sister sees him as what he is. Now, I took one for the team, John. I took Ink Black Heart, which means you have to do Running Grave.
Yeah, Running Grave. All right. Which victim do you want to choose here, Nick? I mean, there are two murders that kind of hang over this whole thing.
Yeah.
One is the drowned prophet, Dayu Weiss.
Yeah.
And the other is Kevin Pirbright. And maybe Kevin Pirbright's, youngest brother, Jacob, half brother, Jacob. We don't really meet. And where you want to go with that? We don't meet Dayu Weiss at all.
No.
Her parentage is disputed. We don't really know anything about her. But Kevin Pirbright, he doesn't have an erotic relationship because of his cult background. Yeah. He's left absolutely consumed by the cult and wanting to free his family, especially his mother, Louise.
Yeah.
And Louise is almost certainly the most tragic figure in the books, other than her son with Zhang, Jacob. That's Kevin's only relationship, is with a mother who can't be his mother because she's consumed by the cult.
Yes.
He knows that, he talks about Deidre Doherty and how tragic it was that she left and left her children behind, Lynn behind. But he said, I only knew that because I knew there was something different about my relationship with Louise. Yeah. And she couldn't hear anything against the cult. So Kevin is, clearly off bound, a killer. He's a victim on many levels. But both Dayu and Kevin are killed by the same person, who is Abigail Glover, the daughter of Jonathan Weiss and his first wife, Jennifer. And Jennifer Weiss, yeah, I think, is the only thing that Abigail Glover remembers as being good. That she had a real mother and they had a real family. And Jennifer drowns under, forgive me, suspicious circumstances because Mama Mazu was in the play at that point. And Abigail Glover, I think, probably had lovers on the Chapman farm, but she certainly has erotic relationships with Patrick and Baz.
And we get the impression that there is also a fairly regular series of them.
Of lovers?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, she's been out of shape because her mother got replaced, Jennifer Weiss got replaced by Mama Mazu, who tortured her. Once that anti-erotic thing was gone, her vocation becomes being she takes a man's job, forgive me, as it's sort of like Robin being a PI.
Yeah.
It's a job which is 95% men. I imagine it's even higher than 95% for firefighters, Nick. Am I wrong there?
No, I think that sounds reasonable. I think it is changing, but very slowly. And of course,
just the physical requirements. One of my sons is applying to be a fireman, and they do their physical fitness test, Nick, wearing a 50-pound vest.
Oh yeah, it's not easy.
Like, whoa, baby.
I have a friend who has many times tried to pass the firefighter test here in the UK as a volunteer firefighter, not as a paid position. And he's never yet passed it, but it remains his ambition to do it one day.
I asked my son, why do they have to wear a 50-pound vest? And he said, Dad, when you go into a fire, you're wearing about 50 pounds of equipment.
Yeah.
And I was like,
and you're breathing through a tube.
That's right. I was like, well, okay then. I guess that makes sense then to see what you can do wearing 50 pounds.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I did all sorts of crazy things in the Marine Corps, marathon triathlons and, weird things. But I tell you, we never did it with 50-pound vests on.
No. No,
That's
and I think Strike admires initially Abigail for what she's done. She's come
right.
out of a cult. She's found herself a position. She's working hard at a job she seems to love. And Strike contrast that with some of the other recovering people from the cult.
Yeah, and that's really again highlighting this Eros and Teros thing.
Yeah,
because she looks like she's wearing a great mask. She seems to be totally, but she's murdering people right and left.
yeah,
Especially when this stuff about how Dayu died begins. People start talking about it, and Kevin Purbright was definitely on his way to figuring it out. And then all the people that were involved in the actual murder of Dayu Weiss back in the day, she's a reaper. So yeah, again, murderer and victim are both people have Eros and Teros imbalances. I mean, it's actually a very rare person in the Strike books that has an anterotic relationship with anybody or anything.
yeah.
Ted and Joan, they're devoted to each other. She
Yeah.
can't have children, and so in a way, not being able to have children, forgive me, takes kind of the bite out of the erotic relationship.
Yeah. I mean, Strike says that they are the only married couple that he can think on and say they're happy, they're completely happy. He hasn't got a lot of other role models.
No. Certainly not his mother and father, biological father.
No. His oldest friend,
Dave and Penny. Woo! Wow. Yeah, if people struggle to see just how off Polwarth is, besides the misogyny, is that there's nothing anti-erotic about his relationship at all.
No.
I mean, it's entirely about convenience to sexual satisfaction. No. And that's what that marriage looks like, Nick. I mean, whew. All right, Hallmarked Man. I did that one. You helped a lot, but you go. I'm going to pass back to you, Hallmarked Man.
Okay, I'm going to need some help with this one, I think. So, primary victim is Tyler Powell. His anterotic relationship is with Chloe Griffiths, who is really Jolanda Linval. Now,
as hidden as that is all through the book, right?
Yeah, as hidden is in that is that. So their plan was to run away. So not really to protect Tyler from the hassle he was getting from the Ironbridge community because of the car crash. Excuse me. It was to save Chloe. So they were going to run away to save Chloe. Tragically,
and her baby, right? And her baby.
Yeah, and her baby. Tragically, of course, Chloe's stepfather. Can you say no? Not the man who was living with Chloe was one step ahead of them the whole time. But I'm struggling to think about what his erotic relationship would be.
Well, there's the only relationship that he has that's mentioned is that the father says that he was consumed by Anne Marie Morgan and was totally broken up when that relationship didn't work out.
Yeah.
I think we can assume that's a lie, right? I mean,
yes, that's my assumption. We don't really know, but then we don't really have anyone that can give really clear, unbiased, first-hand information about what his relationships were.
There's his grandmother,
who I think is at least some stage of dementia by now.
But she seems to think there's something better about Chloe than
Yeah,
she's unhappy that she buys the line from Ian that she's on a train trip with somebody else,
yeah,
but she testifies to how much Tyler loved her.
yeah.
Um, okay, I mean, Ian Griffith is maybe the least satisfying of all the murderers in the series thus far for me. Maybe
That's.
because he resembles me so much.
I was going to say you can't say that just because he's vertically challenged.
No, I think it's because we don't know his backstory.
No, no.
We don't. I mean,
We
I
know
mean,
we know he's involved in sex trafficking and has been for very many years through Europe. But you're right. We don't really know that much
okay,
about it.
let me go through. Just I'm going to read the murderers
Okay.
off here. John Bristow.
Yeah.
We get John Bristow. We get a lot of John Bristow, right? We get
Mm.
Elizabeth Tassel. I really felt like I knew Elizabeth Tassel by the end of that
Yeah.
book. Donnie Lang. Oh yeah, even though he's one of 5 candidates for this thing,
Yeah.
we get a lot of Donnie Lang. Raphael Chisel. Yeah, again, the interviews he does with Robin. This his appearances in Parliament. We get to see this guy. Janice Beatty. Yeah, that's brilliant. She's always in disguise, but Janice too. By the time we get that interview in the Red Room at the end of Trouble and Blood, yeah, we get it. And Dennis Creed the same
Yeah.
way. I mean, Gus Upcott. Okay, maybe Gus Upcott. We don't know anything about him really until the very end of the book.
Yes.
His only appearance is, with his dad at the beach or something. It's just way off stage.
Yeah.
And Abigail Glover, not so much Abigail as well. I mean, we did get Strike's interview with her and things. That was better than Gus Upcott, but not a lot of face time with Abigail Glover. But Ian Griffith, all we get is the interview in part 5.
Yeah.
Everything else, all of a sudden at the end, there he is again. And really, it speaks to Rowling's mastery of this, that's what would seem normal maybe in any other mystery writer, that she didn't give you much of a hint about him because that's not true. If you read part 5 closely, as we have in our charting, it's really quite the bit there. But that was not satisfying. For example, what is his anti-erotic relationship, Nick?
We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we know his erotic relationship is with all the women that he's trafficking.
Yeah.
Yolanda, for one, he impregnates her and then slaughters her, and Sapphire, he's about to put her under the boards. And who's the other woman that Sophia?
Yes.
That he kills. I mean,
Yeah.
So he's got that down.
Yeah.
The erotic side we can see, but why? What,
Yeah.
Is it just because he's short? Because because we don't
don't
get much
know.
of the short stuff either, and failed musician. What is she saying? If all guitarists in the UK that don't get good gigs are murderers, that was disappointing.
Yeah.
Not much there about that. But still, looking at that picture, and Nick, you and I have gone back and forth about this. That's just the murderers and the victims. There's a host of other relationships inside these books.
Yes.
And they're erotic, anti-erotic things. We just touched on really quickly about Ilsa and Nick.
Yeah.
That's a. I mean, they're supposed to. I mean, Strike says that they're one of the best couples he knows. But man, you don't have to look very hard at that and think this is nutty. Maybe it got a lot better after the baby was born, Nick. But whew.
Well, we know Nick's losing a lot more of his hair since the baby was born. So,
all right.
Okay. So we've covered, or you've covered a lot of the spiritual allegory here, but that's not the only psychomachian tool in her shed. So in your 2021 piece, the piece really that kicked all of this off, before Rowling mentioned a word, you spent a lot of time on the psychological interpretation of the myth. Now, I know psychology almost as much as I know myth. So can you help me out here? What do psychologists make of Cupid and Psyche?
Yeah, well, you can go to Amazon.co.uk, Nick, and put in Cupid and Psyche, and you're going to get hit with an avalanche of books from Jungian psychologists. Okay, the myth, whether you're familiar with it or not, is critical in Jungian understanding of the soul and human development, especially the development of a woman's soul, or the anima, the feminine soul. The three books that I really recommend if you're interested in this kind of thing is Eric Newman's Amour and Psyche, the Psychic Development of the Feminine, a commentary on the tale by Apuleius. Robert Johnson's She, all caps, Understanding Feminine Psychology, okay, which is an interpretation based on the myth of Amour and Psyche and based on Jungian mythological principles. And Marie-Louise von France's The Golden Ass of Apuleius, The Liberation of the Feminine in Man, originally the psychological interpretation of the Golden Ass of Apuleius. Okay, this is... well, I'm going to link all the things down below that I've written about this, Nick. But I mentioned earlier the names of Robin's baseline perfume, Philopsychos.
Yes.
And the one she and Strike chose at Story's End. Philopsychos, I think, is actually love of figs. But if you supply the P there, it's the love of the soul.
Yeah.
And the one she chooses with Strike at Story's End, Narciso, both of those perfumes point less to the bedroom than to Robin's allegorical, psychological, and mythological role as Psyche in the series. Now, Eric Newman, in that book I mentioned, Amour and Psyche, the Psychic Development of the Feminine, that's probably the best place to start when you read about this stuff, describes, the discipline that Psyche has to go through in her journey to hell, and really through the whole crisis after she, after love flees her from in the barrow when she has the knife and the light. He describes her discipline as a prohibition against pity, which signifies Psyche's struggle against the feminine nature. Psyche's last trial involves her having to confront death, a marriage to which she was condemned as a sacrifice at the story's start. This is a meeting that she can only survive by transcending her feminine qualities of nurturing and pity. Hence the perfume being Narcissa, right? She must become, if only temporarily, a narcissist to pass through Hades and return to the world of the sun and to Cupid. Now, I didn't talk that much about this myth, but the last mission she gets from Venus is to go to hell. That's basically, what one of the expression comes from, that she's going to die and not come back because nobody comes back from hell. And she's sent to Persephone. Well, the tower advises her how to do it. And what he says to her is, don't show any pity or attention. Don't nurture anybody along the way. People are going to be there dropping sticks. People are going to be there floating next to the boat, Sharon's boat, crossing the Styx. All these temptations for you as a woman to reach out and do the kind and gentle thing. Okay. The myth in Jungian lights is about her transcending the accidental self. Here, her feminine and sexual relation to Eros or Cupid for ego stability, these are Jungian terms, leading to individuation, ascent to the greater immortal self. Robin, as the resident psychologist and the loving soul, is the Psyche cipher of the Strike mysteries. She differs from the relatively passive human beauty of the myth in her active and determined struggle against her feminine nature, her, what she calls it in Troubled Blood, and that scene on the street, what I do, She not only wrestles with her desires for domesticity and maternity in her thinking, But she stands up to strike Cupid in their Valentine's Day street fight and demands his respect, or at least more considerate behavior. But she's still struggling with her difficulty to be the narcissist rather than the great mother when circumstances and her heroine's journey of psychological individuation demand that. Robin, at the end of Hallmarked Man, is really in a crisis about Eros, Murphy, which she's really beginning to understand as a shackle. She really is not going to go there. She's not going to repeat the map mistake, one hopes. And Anteros, Strike, the bumbling Cupid coming down the stairs, I love you, I love you, I love you. Let's get married. She recognizes that that's her Anteros, that this is her exteriorization of her vocation is in Strike. She has to make that decision, not because she needs it and because she's doing it reflexively. She has to make a conscious decision from this vocational self, this larger self, this logos capacity. Not a woman looking for something safe. Though how a relationship with Strike would ever be considered safe. Okay, but that decision is in Jungian circles, at least, and I think it's safe to assume that the Jungian interpretation informs the feminist Rowling's writing of this myth. Yes, there's a spirit and soul psychomachian drama right out of Shakespeare, but I don't think that means it can't also be this Jungian feminine individuation thing, where Robin has to really stand on her own 2 feet before she can be a real partner to Strike.
Wow.
Here we are on Valentine's Day, Nick.
Yes.
And I want to say, as we close this, happy Valentine's Day to you, Nick.
Happy Valentine's Day, John. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the Strellacott series, and here I'm going to throw a bone I think to the Strellacott Files people. I think they're right, as much as they say that it's about Robin's transformation more than it is about Strike. I mean, it says on the cover, it's a Cormoran Strike mystery. I'm like, well, yeah, Strike's really going through transformation. He's becoming a much more gentle and compassionate person, and Robin is drawing that out for him. But boy, Robin's transformation is so much more dramatic. She's going to, casualty much more often than Strike is. I mean, Strike goes, he was there at the end of Cuckoo's Calling. He's there at the end of Ink Black Heart. He's got his bad days. He's got his hard times. But Robin, wow, she's got scars up and down the body here. She's inside and outside. We're in for quite a ride in Strike 9, and she's only at the gates of hell in Strike 8. We got to see her really stand up for herself and be independent. Does that mean that she's on her own as a hostage, or that Strike is taken hostage? And there's going to be some ticking clock bomb going, time bomb going off here inside this book.
Remember the hourglass.
That's right. That's right. And the hourglass, as I think this new contributor to the comment section has said, remember the hourglass inside the crocodile, which is Peter Pan, right? Peter
Pan, yeah.
Yeah. Aren't the hourglass and the alligator on the same link?
No.
In the charm?
No, I think they are separate links.
What is the alligator with? Because the alligator is with something else. Oh, he's with the York, the White Rose of York. I was when I read the things, I said, oh my goodness, they're on the same link, but they're not. They're adjacent links.
Yeah.
Still. All right. What are your plans, Nick, for Valentine's Day?
Okay. Well, so I am tardy in completing part 7 of our group ring work for Hallmarked Man, so I'm going to be completing that. I have almost finished the ring in the book. I think it's important, so I'm going to be writing up a post next week put up on the Substack. Wow. So you're also tardy. So all of our paid subscribers, a good section of our paid subscribers are ahead of us. We need to catch up with them.
Yeah, are they here with us now, Nick? Are they doing this with us? Where are they?
John, what are you going to be doing for Valentine's?
Well, you see, I have my chart. I have to take 12 chapters and chart them and figure it out. I hope they're like 5 and 6. I want to say right here, Nick, that the turn is in 87, just to let you know that I'm gonna read the latch, and I'm gonna go right to 87. I'm gonna skip the climbing up the ladder here and see if I can get it to work that way.
You put forward a powerful argument. I wonder if you're going to sway us all. We'll find out in the next episode.
There's resistance. There's resistance here. I mean, and I am going to look for Cupid and Psyche parallels with Tam Spell's. I don't want to say Tam Spell's proper name until she gives me permission to do that. But Tam Spell's is on the job. I'm going to put the link down below to what she's already done. I'm going to lay out again down below. I'm going to lay out the 20 points in the myth, and hope people will check those out and say, oh yeah, this matches with that. Other than that, Nick, it'll just be oh yeah, and my daughter is coming down with her husband and son. And I have digital services that night. So yeah, all my free time on Valentine's Day. God willing, I'll do the write-up, and you'll have this thing edited so we can put it up on Valentine's Day.
So, well, I'm gonna bet we do, John, and so I'm gonna wish everybody out there, all of our subscribers, have a very happy Valentine's Day.